Hey everyone, this is Dean for Paranormal Pickers. Just getting ready for our next Paranormal Picker adventure. Come on, join me.
What's up, everyone in paranormal world, paranormal pickerland? This is as best as you get, Steve. This is the podcast of the century right here. Paranormal pickers. So say hello to everybody.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Hope everybody's having a great night tonight.
Were you outside checking out Mars tonight, or was that last night?
I'm sorry you broke up for a second there.
Oh, were you outside watching Mars, or was that last night?
Okay, I can hear you.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Oh,
Were you outside watching Mars?
no, it's raining here for days.
Oh, yeah. I saw the moon through the clouds, and then Mars came out a little bit. But I guess tomorrow is supposed to have all the planets aligned somewhere.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's gonna rain off and on here. So,
Well, it sounds like we might have difficulty with the connection here. But you're down in Tennessee, right? Clarksville?
yes, sir. Like 20-minute drive from the Bell Witch Cave.
That's right. So every show we sponsor a tarot card, and tonight's tarot card is Judgment. And for the pornography fellows, that's the rest of the card. It's got a phoenix, a beautiful young lady there. Number 20. So this is episode 20, season 2. Look at that already. And something about the Judgment card. It's, maybe judgment against John Bell in this case. A change of position, a rejuvenation, a rebirth, reward, acquiring a purpose, atonement, paying the piper, which he probably did, accounting for one's action. Ron Lovett says hello. Steve. Hey, Steve, that's Ron Lovett.
Yes, sir. Hello.
So just to get the card out of there, that's the Judgment card, because I want to introduce my guest here, Steve Litteral. Used to be the caretaker, or whatever title they were calling you back in the day, for the Tinker Swiss Cottage, which we also mentioned quite a few times here on the Paranormal Picker world. And then you moved to Tennessee, about 4 or 5 years ago?
Sorry, kind of broke out a little bit there. So, yeah, can you hear me fine?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, I was the director of Tinker Swiss Cottage until 2018. I'd worked there for, I don't know, it was like 12 years, I guess. And then my wife got a job opportunity down here in Tennessee. And so we decided to move down here. We're just like, about 30, 40 minutes from downtown Nashville. And like I said, if I go the other direction to the east, I'm only like 20 minutes from the Bell Witch Cave. So it's a nice little, so we're right on the Kentucky line. I'm only probably, as the crow flies, probably 5 miles from Kentucky.
As the crow flies.
Yeah. So it's kind of nice little, right off a highway. If anybody's gone to Nashville for vacation, you take Highway 24 down here, and I'm only like a couple miles off of Highway 24. So nice little location down here.
Yeah. A little college town, right?
Yeah, we got Austin P University here. And then, of course, the road, we got Vanderbilt and all that stuff. So, yeah, a lot of schools around here.
Cool. Laura says hi. Good to see you.
Hello.
So let's see here. All right, just checking. So I have my phone on over here so I can see the comments, because as you can tell, sometimes it says Facebook user. So my Facebook actually shows the person that's saying it. That's why I'm looking off to the side here. So just so
nice.
you know. hmm So tonight's show is season 2, episode 20, Judgment, and we're going to talk about the Bell Witch story, pretty much all of it. I'm going to bring this together here, see if we can't do this here. That's better. So yeah, it's so I want to first say, being in the ghost hunting field, the Bell Witch never appealed to me. And I was like, okay, whatever. But in July of 2017, all of a sudden, my interest of it was sparked to the almost, it consumed me. Like everything I did, I would see something with the bell. You know, a Nick Bell band was playing the day that I started, and it was in St. Charles, and then just everything, like all these coincidences and synchronicities started matching up. And so now I was like, what's going on here? Why am I seeing this? And I believe it was in July of 2017, and I believe that's when Betsy was born. I believe she was born in July. No, she died in July. She died in July of let me get her thing here.
I think it was in the 1880s or something.
Yeah, July. Yeah.
She grew up to be an older woman down in and passed away in Mississippi.
Yeah, July 11th of 1888 in Yallabusha County, Mississippi. So pretty much that same day, I was getting that impression work I needed to go and all this other stuff. And I'll go over that story later on. But yeah, I was never interested until all of a sudden, then I had to go. And Laura and I took the trip down there and experienced it. And I'll tell you a couple things that happened along the way. And some of it's mind blowing. And you're like, what? This is actually really happening? You know, type of thing. But first and foremost, it's you being a caretaker and just moving down there and a fan of the paranormal, obviously. And now you're a thespian.
Yeah, I when I moved down here, I not long after I moved here, I heard that they had an actual play called Spirit that they did every year in Adams. And where the play is actually at, where the theater's at, is actually on the grounds of the old Bell Farm, because they own quite a bit of land around there. And so I mean, you could throw a rock and hit the place where the cave is at, because it's right below, just south of where the cave's at, where the play is being held. So it's an outdoor theater, but it's got a roof and everything. It just doesn't have walls. And it's right behind the old Adams High School. So it's pretty cool that we do a play called Spirit right on the old grounds of the Bell Farm. And it's the gentleman who wrote the play, David Alford. He's a Adams native, but also he's a professional actor. He's been in a bunch of movies and stuff like that. The most recent thing I can remember is he did 6 seasons in Nashville. He was a Nashville. He played a Nashville agent for stars and stuff like that. But he's a very accomplished actor in his own right. But this year was pretty cool. This was the 20th anniversary of the play, and he actually directed the play as well. So that was pretty cool. I got to play a guy named Frank Miles. He was like a family friend, a guy that lived down the road from them. And it got me interested in that guy. And so I took my kids, and we actually were able to find out where he's buried. Not too far from our house. And where the real Frank Miles was. And he was kind of a mountain man figure. He lived in a holler, like right off the Red River. And he trapped and had a cabin out in the middle of the woods. And, he just lived that manly man lifestyle back then, and just chilling in the woods, killing animals, and eating
Killing
meat.
animals.
Yeah.
I'll touch on that a little bit later too. We got Willie Atkins saying hi. Good evening, guys. Hope all is well.
Hello.
Yeah. So so John Bell moved to the area from North Carolina in 1804. He moved to Adams, Tennessee, and he had about 300 acres. So you're not lying. He had a lot of land out there, and he was doing all the work. I don't know what he farmed. Tobacco,
it was like tobacco,
or something.
Corn, a little bit of everything. Okay. So yeah,
I was gonna say tobacco because I think that was kind of like his money maker there, and it seemed like there was something called the Red River Settlement,
right.
where all of a sudden it was just became so populated during that time, like the 1804s, 1805 era, and then of course they cleared out the land, which I'm sure was a lot of Native American stuff going on there, just like any other place. And that's part of the lore, I guess. And oddly, so he moves from North Carolina, and there's North Carolina connects to the story a little bit, or some theories call it out. But for 13 years, the luckiest number ever. So from like 1804 to 1816, they lived a peaceful life, right?
Right. Yeah. When they first moved here, they had an idyllic life. They, they farmed. They were one of the founding families of Adams, Tennessee, which, back then it was called Red River Station. Right down the road from them now it's a park, but back then it was one of the most important towns of Middle Tennessee. It was called Port Royal. And because that's where all the tobacco farmers would bring all of their crop, they would put them on longboats, and they would actually you could take them. This is the Cumberland River here, the main river, but the Red River, which Adams and Port Royal were on, is a tributary of the Cumberland. So they go from Red River to the Cumberland, go up to the Ohio, go to the Mississippi, and go all the way down to New Orleans. So this area of Tennessee and Western Kentucky is called the Black Patch because of the premium quality tobacco that they produced here.
Gotcha.
It's kind of weird here. They they do a unique thing in this area of the country where they actually smoke the tobacco. So they chop it down to almost the root. They put it in barns, and they and other hardwoods, and they hang it upside down to dry, and then they smoke it. So for a couple weeks. So when they bring it down, it's like a black leathery kind of texture, and so that's why they call this place the Black. And it's a very high quality tobacco, and so the settlers here, the farmers, they would send it all the way down, and a lot of it was so it was people wanted it, and so it made its way. So a lot of the tobacco that was grown here, even back then in the early 1800s, was actually being smoked in Copenhagen and Denmark and stuff like that.
Wow, that's good to know. And also, there's cotton down there, so there's black and white. And during that time, there were slaves. So, and
right.
we'll get to that too. But something that I want to point out is with the whole Bell Witch story. We'll get into more of it, but a key player was the youngest daughter, Betsy, or Elizabeth Bell, and she was born in 1806. So she was the youngest of the family, and also born at the time where they moved to the Red River settlement.
Right.
So she wouldn't know what North Carolina was, and during that whole time, I kind of feel that whole peaceful life was okay up until a certain Betsy reached puberty, per se.
Yeah, it seemed to be about that time.
When puberty hits, everything goes to... So, and that's some of the theories out there too. I mean, there's a lot of different stories, a lot of different angles, and
Oh yeah.
they call it one of the most documented ghost stories of all time, and
Mhm.
especially being over 200 years old,
Right.
um, which is phenomenal. And all the people, and I mean, people were coming from miles and different states and even overseas, I believe, just to get a glimpse of what was going on here. Um,
Yeah, there's several
so,
tales of people from the UK actually coming here and trying to
mhm,
dispel. They came here trying to disprove it, but they work out.
yep. So I apologize. I know you're breaking up, but I think we could hear you pretty good. Um, I don't know if you see yourself glitching there every once in a while,
So far,
but
I was okay. I wasn't sure how it was. You guys.
yeah, I don't know how it's showing up on Facebook, but in the studio it's kind of choppy. But so basically, when puberty hit,
Hmm.
uh, John Bell was out hunting in the late summer of 1817, and this is when the strange things started to happen. So he started seeing unexplained looking animals. Now, again, this is the 1800s, and you have to know what the uh, animal stock was back then. And I did some research in that field as well, and I know that during the time there was animals that are no longer there, either were killed because of their fur and
Hmm.
pushed out. Um, and one of the animals that he said it was like a dog but had rabbit ears. And I'm
Right.
pretty sure him being a hunter for 13 years, he's probably familiar with all the animals in the area. But are you familiar with an animal called the Fisher cat? The Fisher?
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah. So technically, a Fisher cat male is about 30 pounds heavier than the female, and it would stand up and make noises and spit and gnaw and do all this stuff
Hmm.
while you're doing it. So this was hugely hunted in Adams County area at the time, and so much to the point where they were basically there was no more. And years later, the forest kind of deteriorated, and they wondered why. And it was because the fisher cat was the only known enemy to the porcupine because it was so swift that it was able to get underneath that soft spot in their throat to
Hmm.
kill them for food. So because they took the only porcupine enemy away, the
Hmm.
porcupine said, "Well, shit, we're going to eat the hell out of this forest," and they're wondering why the forest happened, disappeared.
Right.
So if there was something of an animal that could be a potential possibility, this is what John Bell may
Hmm.
have seen is a third. I mean, these things are huge. And
Yeah.
if you get a chance, look up Fisher Cat documentaries. It's fun to watch. It's a great creature. You're gonna want one. And the thing is it doesn't fish and it's not a cat. It's kind of like part of the weasel family in a sense.
Huh.
So that's one of my theories anyway. Is that something that's what started in 1817? So what I was trying to do is get rid of the folklore and try to find what the ghost story was.
Oh,
And I
sure.
believe and I believe there is a ghost story because Eliza or Betsy seen the little girl in the green dress.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's kind of
that's
what started it all with her.
I think is the true ghost story.
Yeah.
If you want to look for somebody, I think that's in my eyes is that who you need to hunt for.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, there was a lot of a lot of people don't realize there were elk down here. There were buffalo.
mhm.
Like me and my son, we went boar hunting
Yeah.
over the summer, and we actually found an old buffalo skull from when buffalo were still here.
No
Uh,
kidding.
yeah, so it was we got a nice little trophy, a buffalo skull trophy.
Shut up, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, we because they have they in the late early 1900s they imported Russian boars to East Tennessee.
Yep.
And so we went out and got one over the summer because since they're considered an invasive species, there's no hunting season.
Very
or something
invasive.
like that. Yeah. So, but anyway, while we were out hunting, we got us a actual bison skull from East Tennessee, and it was, from when, back in like the 1700s, early 1800s, when they were still here.
That's awesome, man. That's like treasure hunting, That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know what you're gonna run into out in the woods there.
Exactly. Good and bad.
Right.
What's that moonshine doing? Oh, get out of here.
Right.
Run. And a lot of ginseng too, right? Out that way?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of plants. I mean, this is a very naturally, this is a very rich environment. Like right about 45 minutes from my house, I got Kentucky Lake. So they got huge lakes, a lot of fish, a lot of game. My son and I, we go turkey hunting, deer hunting, so like there's food all over the place around here.
Yeah. So like Paris, Tennessee area. Paris.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Paris is like a little over an hour away from me.
Yep. Been there. Yeah. My buddy Jim lived there for a little bit. So back to the cabin. So they started seeing these animals and they started hearing knocking outside the cabin, knocking on walls, gnawing on bedposts inside. So stuff started becoming inside. But the outside stuff, you hear squirrels chewing on walnuts all the time, dropping about the things. But then they started like hearing a whisper, chains being dragged across the floor, bed covers being pulled. So of course the squirrel's not going to get in there.
Right.
But keep in mind that Betsy is where she's at in her young girl life. And the other thing that I found too is that a couple of the older children started seeing lights at the end of the property, and they called them dead man candles. Do you know anything about the dead man candles?
I mean, they're still around here. Like in Adams, if you go, there's a railroad track that goes through Adams, and people today can. Two of the guys that were in the play with me actually witnessed what now they call them spook lights, like ghost lights. They basically, if you sit at this certain area of the railroad tracks and you flash your light so many times, they'll come out of the woods and then they come towards you. And two of the guys were sitting there like, oh, we just went out there one night. We were like, yeah, right, this ain't gonna happen. They sat out there for about a half hour, and they said, it's real, man. We saw it. And they went out there to try to disprove it. They thought, oh, well, maybe it's the reflecting light of a coming train or something. They waited another half hour. They didn't see any train. So they're like, yeah, we don't know what it was, but we saw it. It's for real.
Or the still.
But the railroad tracks are only just right across the main road there from the Bell property. So,
okay.
So people still, and it's funny, like it's 200 years later. And if I go eat our rooms, and if something happens, like a lady goes out or whatever, like, oh, and they still is blamed for everything.
Right. The Bell Witch gets blamed for everything, correct? Is that what we said?
Yeah. No matter what town, if something bad happens in town,
yeah, you're kind of breaking up here.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. But that's kind of what I wanted to hear. I heard, and that's true. That's something that I heard as well, is that the Bell Witch gets blamed for everything. And I also, when I was down there, it happened to us too. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But again, back into the cabin, there started being bruises on the children, whispering, evolving into a bigger and louder voice. And this voice would know secrets about other households and everything, and always preach about something, or that's the stories that were being told. And the one thing, and she didn't really, the witch, just, I assumed it was a she because they called it Kate.
Right.
She seemed to hate everybody except for the wife.
Yeah, Lucy
and
Bell.
Lucy and one of their sons or a neighbor's son or something like that. And her only objective pretty much was she wanted to kill John Bell.
Yeah, and I mean, she held no. She didn't hide her feelings at all. She didn't sugarcoat anything. If she didn't like somebody, she would let them know right away.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or make fun of them.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the things they kind of leave out in some of the movies and books and stuff, but if you read the original, Ingram book, he talks a lot about it. But she hated the slaves. She was very racist. Called them the N-word. I mean, she was. I mean, they tried to keep one of because Lucy towards the end of her life got really sick, and so they tried to keep one of the female slaves in the house to kind of help take care of her. And she was like, "Ma'am, I don't want to go in there because she's gonna mistreat me and blah blah blah." And so she goes, "Oh, just hide under my bed. She'll never notice it." And as soon as she came, because like every night she would come at a certain time, it'd be like people waiting around. As soon as she came in the house, get that slave out of here, blah 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 blah. And so yeah, the slaves had there was one slave, Dean, one of their their best slave they treated him a member of the family. They let him carry an axe around for protection. He basically main chores, especially when the boys were gone. And he also had his own run-in with the ghost, with the animal.
The dog.
The dog. And it's kind of funny. So the dog is a big thing in the Bell Witch legend, And when I was doing that play, they're like, yeah, every year a black dog shows up and watches the play, or will come here during rehearsals. And they're like, don't mess with the dog, don't touch it, don't. And so we're sitting there. It's like we're doing rehearsals one night, and all of a sudden this black dog just comes right in and starts walking around. And everybody.
So you witnessed that, huh?
Oh yeah, and everybody just acts like they don't see it. And one year, I guess we didn't see it during the actual, when we're actually having our performances this year. But I guess before COVID, I think it was 2017 or 2018. The black dog actually came onto the stage and sat down right in the middle of the play.
Well, 2017 would have been the 200 year, I believe, right?
Yeah. But yeah, they said the guys that were there during that, because a lot every year, including Bob Bell. I became friends with him. Bob Bell and his daughters were in the play, and he's a direct great grandson of John Bell.
Is he the one that runs the funeral home out there?
Yep. Yeah, he's the one in documentaries.
Okay. Yeah, you're kind of breaking up again.
Yeah. Bob Bell is the one who's in all those documentaries.
Right.
He's the and him and his daughters were in the play this year.
Oh, cool. Oh, pretty fun, man.
Oh yeah, and that guy is awesome. Like the last night of the last show, we had a cast party, and he actually put us all in pickup trucks and took us out to the Bell, to the original John Bell cabin site, so you could look down into the well of where the Bell cabin was. And then he actually took us behind, in the woods where John Bell's grave is, and his wife. And then I didn't notice, but he told me, he goes, he's, because he owns, he runs a funeral home. So this guy knows all about funerals, graves, stuff like that. He goes, come out here and walk with me. So we go kind of out into the woods a little bit further past the graves, and there's all these little shallow ditches. And he said, all these are slave burials.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of slaves buried back there too.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see. There's other cemeteries that I know of that are unmarked where you could see the graves too, and they're either Indian or slaves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no mark.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, some of them would just have like a little rock sticking out of the ground, like kind of a foot marker, like, hey, this is where somebody's at. But there's no full blown gravestones or anything.
And this is is this in the wooded area where theirs are at?
Yeah, this is right behind them. So the slaves are buried like, within yards of where they're at.
Interesting. Let's see. So The one thing too is back to Betsy being in her young girl state of mind. She got the attention of a Joshua Gardner
Right.
who were engaged, and the witch didn't agree with that. But there was also where there was that teacher that came into play, the married teacher, I want to say, right? He was
Yeah, he
married,
was married when he first got there.
and then he fell in love with her, and that kind of was like something was going on where
Yeah.
he didn't like it. So I think they were blaming someone was blaming him, but the witch says to not be engaged to Joshua Gardner, and I guess once John died, then she did end the relationship, I guess. Um, so speaking of dying, John died in 1820. The witch took credit for it
Right.
and would laugh hysterically and sing drinking songs at his funeral, which I thought was, I want everyone to do that at my funeral. Go ahead, sing away. But it was kind of interesting when I was researching this, and I went into the potential, and I'll get back into that, of something that the witch had said, and I found John Gardner's name was the guy that wrote the author, again with the synchronicities.
Yeah.
But it took John about 3 years to die. Right? He started getting sick with the throat or
Right.
with his face, something with his face, and I can't. I have to laugh at it because it almost sounds like Bell's palsy.
Right.
You
Yeah, 'cause
know?
yeah, because like you said, it talks about like how his parts of his face would go numb, or like almost like he had a stroke. He had a lot of problems swallowing, breathing, talking. He said he described it to one of his sons like he had a stick stuck in his throat.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
he had a lot of throat face issues going on there.
And he came from North Carolina. So some of the things was that the witch was somebody that he killed in North Carolina or starved to death, and they thought it was Kate Batts, but Kate
Mm.
Batts pretty much outlived them, so that's not a potential. But during the time, I guess there might have been something. I guess that's the North Carolina claim to kind of hook that town into it. But again, back to why did it take 14 years of him moving out to have it present? And that's again to me it's Betsy
Yeah.
either doing it. That's when everything starts. Uh,
Yeah, and with
I
the
mean,
name of the witch too, I learned this during the play. We had there was like a scholar that came and talked about it a little bit to us, and he said that they called the witch Kate, but they were not referring to. They didn't think so. A lot of people now misinterpret it as they thought Kate Batts was haunting them, but she could, like you said, she couldn't have done that because she was still alive. She outlived John Bell.
Yeah.
But the way it worked back then, it was almost like a hoodoo voodoo thing where they called her Kate Batts Witch, meaning she worked for Kate Batts.
she's still gotcha. Yeah.
So it's almost like Kate Batts conjured this person to be
Gotcha.
like almost like her familiar. And so when they say Kate Batts Witch, they're just saying like, oh well, it's Kate is controlling this witch.
Uh-huh.
But now a lot of people misinterpret it as, they're like, well, how could Kate Batts be the witch if she was still alive? And it's like, well, no, she controlled the witch, and that's why they called her that.
But didn't the witch end up saying that she referred to herself as Old Kate?
Yeah, they would call her that, and she didn't correct it.
Oh, they called her. Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
the guys, because like it kind of progressed. So it started out with, like you're talking about, like scratching, pulling bed covers. Then they had guys named the Johnsons, Calvin Johnson and John Johnston. They all lived across the street from the Bell family, and they were, I believe, they're Methodist preachers. They had revivals on their property, big tent revival. Because at the time, this is And the early 800s is the time of the big revival movement and the millenarian. People were looking at the time and Revelation and all this kind of stuff. And these guys would have these huge revivals. And so, of course, first the Bell family secret, because you don't want to go around saying, "Hey, we're being haunted by a witch," because the neighbors would be like, "Well, what the hell are you doing?" You got, and so they brought over the Johnson as kind of like, not exorcist, but kind of like, "Hey, can you figure out what the heck's going on over here?" And started bringing the Johnsons over. They started asking questions, and they're the ones that actually, started getting the witch to talk, like actually physically talk to them. And she started reciting their sermons from the week before, and they'd say, "Well, how do you know?" And she's like, "Well, I was there, silly." Like I was, it's and there's this one story about there were two teachers in the house. Both of them had churches 11 miles away, and she first his sermon
13 miles away.
Yeah. She told them basically both of their sermons, and they're far away, and they did the sermons at the same time.
Right.
So she's like, "Hey, I was there," so kind of like proving her power, like, hey, can't hide anything from me. I'm going to let you know what's up.
Yeah, that was interesting. And back to the James Johnson witnessed it. And when he did witness it, he called it the spirit, like in the Bible. And then his son John tested the witch and said, "No one will know this, but my Dutch step grandmother, what would she say to slaves?" And then she recited back, "Hut tut, what has happened now?" And so the witch replied back to him the exact same thing. And I guess he later on said, or there was an Englishman there as well, and their parents lived in England at the time, and she mimicked them.
Right.
And I guess that Englishman ended up writing a letter back to the Bell saying, "Hey, I apologize for thinking you were lying to me, but the witch visited my parents in England." So
yeah,
so that was kind of bizarre. But yeah, the 13 miles away, that was interesting. The whole reading the sermons verbatim, both of them at the same time.
And that's a kind of strange thing too, because people think, "Oh, well, this witch was evil," and I mean, obviously, the witch did evil things. She killed a guy, but it's like she's showing up in church. She's reciting the Bible all the time. People would start reading parts of the Bible, and she would finish the whole. So she knew the Bible back and forth. So it's kind of a strange story. It's like, okay, well, if this spirit is evil, then she has no problem going into churches and reciting the Bible and all that stuff. So it's kind of an interesting story in that aspect.
But did she poison John, or did she have someone poison John?
Well, see, she says it's in the medicine. She goes, "I gave him medicine this morning," and they found the certain jar question. They're like, "What's this?" And so apparently I forget which book it was in or which story. Apparently they gave some of it to a cat and it killed him pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, and who knows? Maybe one of the kids thought it was medicine and gave it to him, or maybe that's how he got it. Or I mean, this is a spirit that conjure up walnuts and fresh fruit and stuff like that from the sky. So like when Lucy was sick, John's wife, she's like, "Oh, poor Luce, what can I do for you?" And so she was like, "Oh, I would like some fresh fruit or nuts or something like that." And so all of a sudden, all these like almonds and stuff start just falling in her lap. So
Lucy was she considered Lucy as the most perfect person to walk the earth.
Yeah.
And yes, she presented fresh fruit and actually sang hymns to her.
Right.
So here's this perfect person in the world, and I want to kill your husband. You know,
Right. Yeah.
here's the recipe to get old Jack off the face of the earth, and that's what he referred to
Yeah.
John Bell as his old Jack.
Yeah. And you know
Just
what? One of the movies I thought was the one of the stories are I don't remember the name of the movie. It was, I don't know, so many years back.
but Sutherland, Donald Sutherland, that one.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Try to portray John Bell as like this kind of like pedophile kind
Yeah.
of that did not go over well in this area at
Nope.
all. That they will
Nope.
not, because they're like, hey, he was a fine, upstanding citizen. He did a lot for the community, blah blah blah. And so, of course, Hollywood always tries to take these stories and make them into something even creepier. But I'm sure John Bell had his faults, but that movie really upset a lot of people around here. Because
Yeah,
a lot of these families are related to these people,
right.
here. So yeah, that movie went over like a lead balloon in this area.
Yeah, pretty much. And I know when we took the tour into the cabin, that was one of the things they tell you is like, we don't believe any of that. Don't believe them. It's all lies.
Yeah.
But again, it's a cover up. That's what they're trying to say. And there's so many angles. Nobody really knows the truth. All we know is that some of the claims that are out there, the gnawing and the bruising on the kids, for that matter,
Right.
and the fact that she was 14 in puberty. And going back to the witch, though, is she identified as what, 4 different names? Jerusalem, mathematics.
Yeah, those were. It was like a family of witches that would, and they would like. It was they actually one act of the play where they Jerusalem mathematics. Yeah, there was like 4 of them, and they're all going around talking and arguing. And stuff like that.
Cryptopsy, and I think the other one was Black Dog, of all things. Yeah.
And they would fight and argue and stuff like that, and they would always interrupt while he was trying to pray. And they'd say, "Oh, he's a gunner for sure," So yeah, they were trying to. Anytime he would try to recite the Lord's Prayer, they would start yelling and screaming and doing everything they could to keep him from finishing the prayer.
Wow. So, to Kate Batts, I seen somewhere, and I want to say it was Ancestry or something of that nature, where someone actually said that she wants more information about Kate, because her understanding is that Lucy Bell was the sister to Kate's father.
Yeah, the Bells and Kate Batts' family were actually related. So they're like cousins or something like that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they were, a lot of the families that lived at Red River Station were, related somehow, either through marriage or, cousins or something like that. Because a lot that they came from in North Carolina were tightly knit communities. A lot of people don't know, but Kate Batts and John Bell were actually related. And they had a dispute that they took up with the church because, at that time they didn't have court on here.
Well, actually, they did go to court because of that. They first went to church. It was a dispute because he charged Benjamin Batts, his Kate's brother-in-law, I guess, Benjamin or something like that, too much interest, right? On some things, and yeah, they did go to court in the church, and they found him not guilty. But then later on, they went to court.
Right. Yeah, because they didn't have houses, so they would have to wait till they had like itinerant judges and do a circuit. Because at the time this place was very rural. So there's no house or nothing like every couple times a year a judge would and some lawyers and they'd all meet at the public house or the church and
Yeah.
say, hey, let's go ahead and file our grievances and stuff like that. And but yeah, Kate Batts ended up getting Bell executed from the bench, and for usury. So I believe that about she had rented one of his slaves, and he charged her an exorbitant rate, and so she went to the preacher, and they and the thing is, Red River Baptist Church is still there.
Oh, wow.
You can go to Adams Baptist Church on Sunday if you want. So it's one of the oldest churches in Middle Tennessee.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't know that was there.
Yeah, in the back, it's the building is not the original, but if you go behind it, there is a graveyard, all kinds of people buried back there. So the Red River Baptist Church is still in Adams, Tennessee, if you want to go there on Sunday.
Interesting. One of the things too is she took shape of a rabbit. Now,
Yes.
I found this interesting because there was reports that people in the area actually stopped eating rabbit, especially if it had a witch's mark on it, as like a black spot on its left hind foot or something.
Yeah.
So they stopped eating rabbit.
Yeah, because they were afraid they were going to shoot at the witch and just basically.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's the tale for a while. Nobody, or now, even now today, I've heard from a few people. They're like, yeah, if we go rabbit hunting and we find a weird spot on it, we don't mess with it.
Wow, even today.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of weird how, because like I said, a lot of the people in Adams are still related to the original, founders of that town. So you today, you still have Bells and Bats and all those kind of people still, Johnston's still walking around.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So a lot of them still carry that to this day.
So was it that John Bell was starting to drink? Was he like an alcoholic?
I don't know. I haven't really heard too much on that. I mean, it sounds like he ran a pretty strict house. So I don't know. Like they made sure they read the Bible every night and prayed and did all that stuff. I mean, obviously, that's not to say they're not drinking. Maybe they're doing it outside the house or something. But I don't know. I've never really got a sense of, because around here it was, unless you're getting water out of a spring, a lot of the stuff can kill you. Drink water. So a lot of time people would drink stuff like that. You can drink that, it's not going to kill you because it's
Right.
grilled and all that stuff. So, I'm sure he drank because the era before the Baptists had all the big things about drink. Because I grew up Southern Baptist, and none of that stuff. But these are Baptists from 200 years ago, before they had all the mores and stuff like that about them. I think that was probably more post-Civil War and later when they started being more anti-alcohol.
So what year did John get removed from being an elder in the Baptist church? When did that year dispute take?
It was maybe 16 or 17. I know it was not too long before they started.
So kind of, right. So again, we got this young girl, and then we got this movie rendition of pedophile, and then we have him being removed from a church that I'm sure he loved and preached for. And then all of a sudden he's, maybe the drink started being heavenly and just removed the pedophile part out of it. Could it just have been domestic abuse in the household? He got drunk. He didn't know what he was doing. And now he's, causing the scene at home. Is that a potential possibility?
I mean, this is, before, police and your wife and children were seen as your property, and you could do as you will. Aren't going to like it. You start beating up your wife somewhere, somebody might beat you up. But
Yeah.
but yeah, you know, it's always a possibility. So it's from what I read, and I mean, he sounds like he was a very strict father, and that he ran a tight household, but he wasn't like, I don't know. I mean, his sons, his family seemed to like him. I mean, you know, took good care of him. Betsy was very distraught when he died. So I don't. I think if, 'cause, you know, it seems like even in adulthood, his children stayed. They built cabins within eyeshot of his cabin.
Right.
So I have to imagine if he was very abusive, they were probably. I mean, you know, just like today, like if you got a dad or mom, you know, beating the crap out of you, if you can, you're out. You know, smell you later. I'm saying.
Exactly.
So, but his, and it's not a possibility, but his kid, I like John Bell Jr. His cabin is right across the field from his dad, and then Drury, he stuck around. I believe the story is he had a slave as a wife. And had children with her.
Oh, okay. That I didn't know.
But yeah, they that how he I mean legally married, but they lived together as you know, we're not officially married, but people see you as married.
Gotcha.
There's legal term for that. But anyway, Drury stayed. So the only person that really went far away was Betsy, and that was, you know, after she married. And the reason she went to Mississippi is because her kids were where they live, because she wanted kids, and because of course, and that teacher, his wife died, became a widower. He inherited Betsy, who's, you know, old enough to be his daughter, and but they were married for a long. When he was a little bit older, he had a stroke, and she basically had to take the last 30 years of his life.
So Richard Powell does enter the scene, and she does end up marrying him later. But do you think, because it seems like everything started when he started entering the scene too, right?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. They don't really haven't really heard too many of enter, because, you know, like they always talk about him at the school, him and Betsy.
He lived in her home.
Yeah, but there's not too many stories about him actually interacting with the witch.
Because isn't he the one that wrote the book? Didn't he write the story?
Well, you know, you got it was M.V. Ingram.
Yeah.
Wrote one, and then one of the children wrote down a lot of the stories, but with the stipulation that these stories were not told until everybody was dead.
Yeah, didn't Richard Powell have? He's the one that left the story in an envelope and say "Do not open." Right? Is that?
That could have been. I all the names are kind of running together. It's been a little while since I read, but I'm sure he. I mean, he was a very educated man, so I'm sure. You know, even in the interest of science, I mean, he wouldn't have. I'm sure he scribbled something about it.
And the two that the witch hated most was, or the spirit, I should say, hated John and Betsy because she was punished for not telling the truth.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, like, because, you know, you figure if the spirit loved the mother, why would she not love her youngest daughter, who everybody doted on?
Right.
You know, but I mean, maybe, you know, but everybody said she was beautiful. Maybe the spirit didn't like her because she was pretty, or maybe Betsy had you know, she knew she was pretty, and the spirit's like, well, let me take you down a few pegs.
God, that's an adorable thing. But for not telling the truth, I could say that, especially in that state of religious, you know, time, you know, when everything was drilled down into. So advancing a little bit, the witch, John passed, and now the witch bids farewell and says, "See you later, I'll be returning in 7 years." And then comes back to John Jr., 7 years later, gives predictions, unknown reason, blah, blah, blah. And then said I would return in 107, which would make it, 1935-ish.
Right.
And there's no record of that. But I want to not dwell too much on that, but I also want to pinpoint stuff that I find interesting. So one of the things that she was claimed to say is that for the first time she's leaving, it was in 1821, after the winter's over and the spring starts of 1821. Betsy cancels the engagement with Joshua, and then the witch says, okay, I'm off to the West Indies.
Mm.
And I'm like thinking, well, what the hell's in West Indies? So I did find something of interest. See if I can find my notes here. And let there be light. I found, I don't have it here. Oh, yeah, I do. So the witch left West Indies. There was a slave revolution in the West Indies.
Oh,
and the USS, huh?
I was gonna say, I've heard that Haiti, and I'm like, oh, Haiti was before that, during the Napoleonic era.
It was in that time. It was pretty much around that time, because Mexico's independence was February of 1821. So from 1821 to 1865, that's when Cuba was still importing slaves. And then the West Indies Squadron started in 1821 to 1841, and the ship USS Shark was heading out there to stop the slaves. So I found that timing very interesting, and considering that she hated the slaves, I think that was, so I kind of like envisioned like Dean, the slave down there, and his wife, who he would go visit and come across his dog, and he had this little protection on him made by his wife. So I was thinking, well, maybe it's some kind of like a voodoo type of thing where, maybe it was them, and to not direct attention to the slaves, they made it to where they hate the slaves. It's not to draw attention to them. See where I'm going? See where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it says, because that West Indies threw me for a loop. I'm like, well, why West Indies? Okay, so now they're going down there to prevent slavery, and then that's when the slaves became free down there, years before the Civil War. And then of course she comes back, and one of her claims was to say that she predicted the Civil War is going to happen. Right. And that was 30 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of Betsy's sons was actually killed in the Civil War. Yeah. He died at the Battle of Franklin.
Oh, cool. I mean, not cool, but interesting to say that, because I know that she had two brothers in the military as well, right? And John too, I believe.
Yeah, they fought in the War of 1812. They were with General Jackson in New Orleans.
Yeah. And I don't even want to go down that road with the Jackson thing, because I just think that's just a fabrication.
I went to the Jackson home, the Hermitage, and I asked one of the historians there if there's any evidence of him being in it. I mean, he did own property in the area. I mean, Jackson owned property all over Tennessee.
Right.
But during that specific time, she goes, he kept pretty good detailed thing, and we can't find, I guess apparently they've been asked before, they said we can't find anything about the Bell family or anything. So it is known that like John Bell Jr. and them, they know General Jackson, because like I said, he did serve with him during the War of 1812. But there's no mention thing afterwards, like with the Bell Witch, and how is because there's this the story about how the wagon stops, and him and this spirit have a conversation and all that, and they're like, we can't find, and out of all the thousands of documents and diaries and stuff that they have at the Hermitage, they can't find anything about it. And the thing is also, like, even if it did happen, you think Jackson's going to write about it or tell anybody? He's a serious character. and he's not going to go around telling ghost stories.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is a guy that survived duels. So, you know.
Exactly. So, speaking of Bibles, there is a Bible that still exists. Claims of a living family members having stuff happen to them since finding the Bible. I guess it was Bob.
Yeah, that was Bob. They
Yeah.
were, I think it was when his parents passed away. They found the original Bible that was in the cabin when all this stuff happened. And I think his uncle, somebody said, hey, you know, usually whoever has a Bible, sometimes bad stuff happens to them. And so Bob's like, well, I don't want it. And so he ended up giving it to his sister. And for a while. And then years later, Bob was like, hey, do you that Bible I gave you? And any don't know what happened to it. So sure, somebody will find it. You know, maybe antique store or something somewhere. But
So it's missing right now.
as far as like when Bob, like nobody knows where it's at right now.
Interesting. Now, one of the claims is when that Bible took place, some china dishes were removed from the kitchen cabinets and placed on the full floor without breaking them. So there was stuff happening, paranormal wise.
Yeah, and
in
Bob
discovery
said
of the
that's when he
Bible.
was a kid, when his grandparents were actually still alive. Because I believe he lives in his parents' or grandparents' original house now, and because you know they passed away a long time ago. But yeah, he said when he was, I think his grandma called his dad, and she was like, "Hey, there's some shenanigans going on here," and they went over there, and like you said, there was like a bunch of like all the china up in the floor and stuff. I mean, and he remembers that. I mean, he was like maybe 12 or 13 when that happened. And
Wow.
yeah, so you know the witch still, you know, I mean, and like I said, the anything weird that happens around here, they blame it on Kate. You know, they'll be like, "Oh, Kate's here." Kate, so like I said, I go to that down in it's in the old Adams High School. You're in an old high school cafeteria.
Been there.
Yeah, you're eating awesome food, but yeah, like one time, she's like, "Kate," you know. Well,
I got a similar story too. But yeah, it's nice to have it. You know, it's nice to know that a town has a scapegoat for everything. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anything to go with Kate's fault.
A little bit on the Native American curse, jewelry. You mentioned him. Yeah,
Right.
I guess him and a friend dug up a jawbone, took it home. A tooth got lost on the floorboards, and the witch said, "This is who I am. I'm looking for my tooth." You know.
Yeah.
Is that portrayed in the play?
They do mention it, and also they talk about how the spirit told him that there was a buried treasure and all this kind of stuff. And there's this one scene where people are having a big party at their house because they're waiting for the spirit to show up, and jewelry and the
A spirit party.
Yeah, and basically people from all around would because like people in like where I live in Clarksville in Montgomery County, they would ride out there on the weekend to listen to the spirit and stuff like that, and they're getting ready for the spirit to show up, and here comes jewelry and the Johnstons and all that stuff, and they're all they've been out digging in the middle of the woods all day underneath some rock, and they're all covered in mud. One of the guys like, well, is the treasure really out there, spirit? And she's like, oh no, I just wanted to have fun and has go out there and dig and blah 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 blah. So she was always sending them on a wild goose chase, stuff like that, just kind of prick. So
that's awesome. So a little bit back. So back, like I said at the beginning of the show, 2017 July. All of a sudden, I got this impression of the Bell Witch popped in my head. Didn't escape until I visited there, and I can. If you're familiar with computers and mapping, business mapping, I actually mapped out everything that tied into
Oh, that's
my
cool.
story. And I'm telling you, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's how, and you're going to be amazed at some of the stuff I'm going to about to tell you. So we got about a half hour left in the show. I know you got to be up in the morning, so I don't want to leave you too long here.
No problem, brother.
So, and I appreciate you doing this wholeheartedly, especially you being in the spirit play, which is cool. So again, in July of 2017, the Bell Witch story appeared in my life out of the blue and let the synchronicities consume my life. So going back in 1969, I was 3 years old. My mom and dad purchased their second home. The family that we bought it from had 14 kids.
Oh, wow.
And their last name was Bell.
Any relation?
So I don't know. I couldn't find that stuff, but I heard that some of the kids we have been not too pleasant to feral cats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Of
Yes, of course. So 2 days prior to my 52nd birthday, here I am crossing the threshold of Adam, Tennessee. So Laura, knowing all these synchronicities, as soon as we were approaching Adam, she started acting different. Like all of a sudden, here I am. You know that moment where you cross the threshold and you're like, yeah, here I am. Well, just right before that, she's like, I got to call my son. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm getting closer here. No, I got to call the son. And she starts like acting differently. It was weird. She goes, well, I just thought of something. I had to call him. And, you know, here we are crossing into Adams and I see a Dollar General. So I just pulled in there. I said, well, I need to get some nail clippers. And Laura forgot to pack socks or something like that. So she had to buy some socks. And then, she talked to her son on the side of the building there. But it was just so weird, like at that moment, the moment that I've been waiting for, it was like different than what I expected. So then, interesting enough, I clipped my nails. I wanted to clip my fingernails and leave my fingernails to the witch in Adams, Tennessee. So my fingernails are out there somewhere, Steve. Maybe part of some witch's brew right now, or I don't know, maybe a necklace. Who knows what they do with them? But I thought that was my little token, or what do you call it? Something that you leave behind. But oddly, the cashier started complaining, and I guess one of them started bleeding on their finger all of a sudden for no reason, and she needed a Band-Aid. And then I couldn't find this Dove's chocolate that I wanted, and I found that, so I went to her, and she was like, she came back. It was a weird scenario that happened there with the blood and everything, and nails being clipped off in the parking lot there. And then, so finally I was able to just go back out of Adams, turn around and do the experience again, like take two, So we did that. And, so we went and visited the cabin, the school, and drove around, and it was actually pretty popular place because there was like 21 people already toured the cabin and cave. So we went back in there, and Laura, she was on a cane because she was like a week away from having knee replacement surgery.
Oh yeah,
and
she was having all those issues.
Yeah, and so as we're sitting there or going through there, it was like we were having a blast. I mean, it was fun. It was a nice day. Walked down there, and her frame of mind went from needing like desperately to call her son, and all of a sudden she felt like extremely happy to have done the experience and stuff. And she was like, it was like over to top. Like I was like she wasn't complaining or nothing. So it was like something changed in her. This is me noticing. So when we left there, so I did film, and I have it on there. I'll throw it up on the YouTube. But I have a clip of a tree that kind of forms into a face, kind of pareidolia in a sense. Right. And Laura says, I pointed it out to Laura. I'm like, look at that face on that tree over there. And she like panicked for a little bit. She's like, that looks like me. So she thought she saw herself in the tree. I'm like, well, I didn't even think about that, but wow, yeah. And it was like face looking back at us. So we also went into the cave, and I had some issues as well with my back or my breathing, so I couldn't bend over too far. And going back in the caves, I'm like, I'm getting out of here. Plus, I developed claustrophobia just in the last year or so, or 2 years. So we couldn't stay in the cave too long, but she actually said a prayer. She stayed back where that body was found, and she said a prayer for the little girl, saying basically, if you're still here, you can leave, stuff like that. So it was a nice prayer. So then when we're leaving, we go to the entrance or exit, and there's a couple porta potties there and some garbage, and there was all these white feathers on the ground. Well, my brother passed of lung cancer, and feathers was a sign that we would see to say, okay, that's my brother. So the first thing I thought of was my brother, and I wanted to take one, and Laura's like, no, you don't take anything from the Bell Witch Cave. And if Willie's still on here, he knows why.
Oh yeah, that's the first thing they tell you when you go in the cave. Do not pick up any rocks or take them with you, because you'll be sending them back.
But so I couldn't take the feathers. I really wanted to. And then this girl came up with her papa, and she had bought one of the little bell dolls, and I noticed there was a little bell on it. And I said, well, look at the little bell. I was trying to get her. I don't think she understood bell. So that was interesting. And something with a nickel. I'm not sure what I wrote down nickel, but I don't remember the story. It's been a while. And leading up to the trip, I had Laura watch the Curse series that took place there. And that was an interesting show. It was about, 5 episodes or something like that?
Yeah.
So that was cool. In that show, they actually sat at the cafeteria, table 14, and then when we sat down, it was table 14 that we were sitting at. And the woman you talk about, that it was in the show, and the cashier, when I went to go pay for the food, she took my credit card and it flipped out of her hands and flopped around and then landed on the floor. And she's like, Kate. Yeah. So she blamed Kate on that.
Yeah.
Picked it up, go back to the cave. So we walked around inside the schoolhouse, which is now like a courthouse or something. I don't know. It's a bunch of different things in there, I guess. And so we walk outside, and I just walked around in front, take some pictures. And I told Laura to stand by the car because of her, her knee. And I get to the bottom, I see this placard, and it says Fort Redmond, which is Laura's last name, Laura Redmond. And I'm like, I didn't even know that coming down here. And I'm like, well, this ties you into it, And then you just saw your face on the tree. You're experiencing changes in her attitude, and now I see Fort Redmond here, and I'm like thinking, holy shit,
Too many things.
So that
coincidence.
It gets better. So then I'm walking up, and near the tree, there's this section of a wing of a bird, like the whole wing sitting there on the sidewalk. I got a picture of that. I could probably pull that one up real quick here, because it was, maybe I have to bring that up, but let's see. Yeah, the wing, that freaked me out, the damn wing, because I don't know. I'm telling you, it was like, okay, everything else is okay, But when you start doing this shit with the whole with the whole witchery stuff, I mean, the fingernails, okay, that does I do not see nothing. But then when I start seeing this stuff here,
Oh wow.
yeah,
That's a straight up
that
wing
was
just right on the sidewalk.
yeah, and that blew my mind a little bit there. Not gonna lie to you, Steve. After the Redmond sign and then the wing, and then Laura just experiencing, just having so much fun and loving the whole experience. And then she even says, I want to stop at a garage sale. I want to get a car seat for my grandson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, if we see a garage sale. So we're driving around Adams, which isn't that big. We saw some old buildings there, and I swear to you, there was an old baby's car seat in front of one of the old buildings. And I stop at it. I go, it's pretty beat up. Do you want that one? She's like, no. But she willed it.
Yeah.
She willed it, and we seen it. And I was like, holy crap. So then we left town. Of course, we went the scenic route. We were actually heading towards Memphis, Buffalo, and then Memphis. We were going to stay in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. And then, so that car seat happened. So we actually stopped at a garage sale, and she did find some items for the grandson, which was kind of cool. So Adams, speaking of Adams, it's actually one of my ancestors' last names, but I believe it's 2 M's or 2 D's, A-D-D-A-M.
Okay. Like the Adams family.
Yeah, so, and I was heading towards Eads, which is just near Memphis, to do some research on the property, or on my family. So, of course, we found a garage sale just outside of Adams. The people seemed welcoming. They were actually talking to us about her going to the school when the mom went to the school and didn't experience anything too much. But it was like a nice stop to kind of like land, like kind of playing ourselves, kind of like get the whole heebie-jeebies, get the Adams stuff to stay in Adams as we go forward. But it didn't.
Did you visit the Bellwood Cemetery in town?
I don't think so. No. Mm-mm.
It's on the other side of to the east of the high school. It's called Bellwood Cemetery. And
we didn't.
There's a big old obelisk there, and like all the Bell family members are buried in there.
Wow. Yeah, no, we didn't have too much time. It was like a Sunday morning or something morning, because I remember telling Laura, I go, when I reach the church where my ancestors' family is, if there's somebody there, I'm going to run up to him and start talking to him. Mm-hmm. So eventually we got there. There was one car there, and the pastor was walking out, and I'm standing there, and he's like, oh, how's it going? And he starts talking to us. He goes, well, I'm kind of in a hurry. And I'm like, well, that's all right. I was just going to visit my ancestors in the grave over here. Oh, yeah, who's your family? So he starts talking to us. And next thing you know, he's bringing us into the church, showing us all the whole stuff, and he's giving the story. And I look at Laura, and she's like this. What? How does this happen to you? I was like, I don't know. This happens, So that happened in itself. But prior to that, we were driving through Hurricane Mills, where Loretta Lynn's house was, right. And she just passed. Right. And of course, her property's haunted. There was a wedding party out there, taking pictures, the sunset pictures. And then our GPS, so we kind of went in the back. I queued in the town I wanted to go to, GPS, and it took us in these back roads of Tennessee in her car. I didn't have my truck, so it was kind of like, I wish I had my truck. But so we're like winding around, and next thing I know, we go up this hill. There's a barn there, and then 2 ranch houses. and a dog.
Oh,
And the dog starts to attack us, the car, and it starts
man.
biting the tire. And I'm like, what the hell? And then I look back in the mirror and I see 2 dogs. And I'm like, oh, shit. Now I'm thinking Bell Witch,
Yeah.
the dog, the black dog. So then we go through this other loop, and I'm going down the street. And I'm like, that's not feeling right. And there's a car in front of me that said, and I don't have my truck. I need to stop and turn around. And I did. So I set the GPS again, and it took us all the way around this other side. And then I turned left, and I saw this barn, and I saw the 2 ranch houses again. I'm like, how the hell did I get back here? Now there's 5 dogs. One of them is sitting in the middle of the street waiting for me. And Laura's like, turn around. I'm like, no. We know what to expect now. I said, film it. I think we got a video of it with the dogs barking at the car. And by the time we got out of there, like this, holy crap. I said, I'm just going to go back the same way I came in and go figure it out later, because I ain't going to do that again. So that happened. So, of course, Dean, being the slave that had the dog, Dean, me.
Yeah.
And it gets better. So, so we leave Hurricane Mills and get to Memphis, do my thing, and we had a great time. Went to Studio City, but that's for a different story. But related to the Bell Witch, actually, the lady in the garage, or the garage sale, told us be careful in Memphis because the Graceland Hotel had Legionnaire's death. There was some Legionnaire's disease that killed somebody there, like 5 days before. And I'm like, holy shit. So, we stayed someplace in Mississippi or something like that. Well, it was my birthday too. So we stayed at one hotel, and they had like mold and blood stains on the sheets, and
nice.
people running in the thing going, I need more cups. And I'm like, this, what the hell? No, we're going to check out. We're not staying here. So we just drove down to Mississippi. Not that it was any better, but it was better for me anyway, because I could breathe without inhaling mold on the showers. But so I get home, and now a month later, I go down to the Roadhouse in Oregon, Illinois, and sit there for a little bit. And the reason why I went down there, I went down there with Tim, is because they released that Bourbon County beer they release every year.
Okay.
So this is like in November 24th of 2017. So a month after my birthday. And so we go down there because this Franklin Inn was serving this beer. So we stopped at Oregon, stayed there for a little bit, and then we went to the Franklin Inn. And I'm sitting there talking to this guy, and I said, oh, yeah, we just got back from Tennessee and no, we weren't talking about Tennessee at all. I was talking about ghost hunting. Down here, ghost hunting near Oregon, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden he said, well, he introduced himself, and his name is Dean.
Huh.
And his birthday was a year and 1 day before mine.
Oh, wow.
Or after mine. I think he was a year younger. And he, out of the blue, because I didn't say nothing about the Bell Witch, Tennessee, or anything like that, he said, you know what? My mom was a direct descendant of John Bell.
Huh.
And that his brother died of cancer, and my brother died of cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait a second. So here's a Dean who's born a year after me, almost to the day, and he's telling me that his mom was a direct descendant of John Bell. And I just had this whole Bell experience. So, and the name Dean, the coincidences is just bizarre. And then, the other thing too was with the rabbit. So 3 days after I met this Dean guy, I was at the Alden School where I lived. Obviously, you know
Right.
that. And then I'm looking down into the yard and I see this rabbit there. And I'm like, holy crap. And I saw Mike leave the house and the rabbit didn't do anything. Now, this is November, so I'm thinking, oh, the thing's dead or frozen or something like that. So I wanted to go and I grabbed my camera to take pictures of it. When I get up there, it's not moving. And I was like, what the hell is it? And I leaned in. It's actually a pile of leaves that resembled a rabbit.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was like, okay. That was pretty interesting.
Oh
But
man.
oh yeah, there's more to it. Like I said, like I held up, there's more to it that I could write a book about. But yeah, it's that whole experience and how it came about. I think it was maybe something with the Dean name, something with the 200 years, but all of a sudden it was just like it got into my head and it didn't escape.
Yeah. Now, did
And
you
then
get to go see the original? So they don't. I mean, obviously the original cabin's gone, but they do have one of the cabins that were on the property.
yeah, I got
Next
pictures of that.
to the school. Yeah, that's a pretty cool. Because when we were doing the play, they actually opened it up,
Oh,
so
cool.
people could go in there. But yeah, that's a cool little. And of course, like half of the reenactments of all the documentaries about the Bell Witch have been, shot in that little cabin.
Nice. Yeah, we did. I got a few pictures of that, and when I upload this to YouTube, I add those little fillers in there with the videos and stuff that I talk about or we talk about, and I can add that stuff together. So I
Sure.
see we got a few more minutes here. So I haven't asked you yet, but besides the black dog, have you experienced any paranormal witchy activities down there in Adams or even Clarkville for that matter?
No, when I was in Clark's or in Adams all the time, it was kind of weird because when we were doing the rehearsals for the play, we were doing them at Bob's place. So we're actually doing the rehearsals in a funeral home. So like we're out there doing our rehearsals right where they put the coffin where they have the funeral. That was our fake stage until we went to the real stage.
Wow.
But yeah, you'd be back in the break room. There's just coffins and stuff laying there. But I thought for sure, I'm like, oh, something's gonna happen in here. Nothing. And then, but like I said, when the black dog showed up at our play rehearsal, though, that was a little real. I was like, that's a freaking black dog, and we're all in the middle of, doing our rehearsals, so you can't really break character because we're all, trying to do our best at the play, but we're all out the corner of our eye. We're all just looking at this black dog. So the one guy who, he was kind of I guess he would be like the manager. Like he kind of like ran all the sets and stuff like that. He had a dog with him, but his dog, we all knew what his dog was named Chief. We all knew his dog. But yeah, this other dog just shows up. And
That's crazy.
That guy's not there. Chief's not there. And so just this random dog shows up and like walks right up to the stage.
That's so crazy.
Like, holy crap. So we all get in the, our scene ends. We all get in the back and we're like, holy crap, you see that dog? and then one night I was leaving and we used the back entrance to the park and I'm leaving and there's this dog standing right in the middle of the road. And so I stopped my car and he just stood there for a few seconds and then he just walked off. And I'm like, alrighty then. So
you did have an experience after. Okay.
Yeah. But one of the creepiest places I've been since I've lived in Tennessee since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a place not too far from me called Fort Donelson. And they had a huge battle there. It was one of the first forts taken in Tennessee by the Union Army, and I was out there walking in the woods one day, and it just, it felt like somebody was watching me, man. I got a real
Oh
creepy
yeah.
vibe out there.
Hmm.
That and the Battle of Franklin, we went to I believe it's called the Carter House. In the Carter House was a local family, and the uh, the trenches were right in their front yard.
Wow.
So they were fighting. The Union and the Confederate soldiers were fighting right in their front yard. When you open up the barn, the barn is Swiss cheese. There's still bullet holes everywhere. But Betsy Bell's son was killed at that battle, and he died on the Carter House porch.
Was that left trick? Left trick? Is that one of the names?
Yeah, something. Yeah, and, but the Franklin too. That was another place where I got some really, we're staying in that house, and it just, I don't know, felt a little. You get some heebie-jeebies.
Well, that's interesting. You said you moved down there in 2018, and I started my experiences in 2017, and now you're the role you were playing in Spirit. What were your role? Who were you in the play?
I was Frank Miles. Actually, I was two guys because one of the guys got sick, and so we had 6 shows altogether, and all of them because this is the first year they've had the play in a couple of years since COVID.
Right.
I think 2018 or 19 was the last year they had it, and but I played Frank Miles, and then the guy who played Calvin Johnston, one of the Johnson boys that lived across the street, he got sick, and so I actually played both roles.
Okay.
So people would be like, "Oh, who are you?" I'm like, "I'm Frank Johnson," because I'm doing both. And so there was a couple scenes where I was Frank, and then a couple scenes where I was Calvin.
But they were both brothers, though.
No, Frank was an older guy. He was like a mountain man type character, and then Calvin was one of the younger brothers of the Johnson clan. So because they had the John Johnson, the dad was the minister, and then he brought his boys along. But they were all family friends of the Bells, and they were some of the first people that found out about the haunting and all that stuff. One of the scenes we do is it was very so it's kind of cool, like because John Bell Jr. in the play comes off as kind of like a grumpy, kind of old, because by this time he's an older guy, and he just doesn't like all these people in his house all the time and bothering his parents and stuff like that. And there's this one intense scene where one of the Johnson boys kind of questions John Jr., saying, "Hey, well, is this really, because at first he wasn't sure if it was real." And he goes, "Well, if something happens," he goes, "What do you mean if?" He's like, "This stuff happens every night, man." He goes, "Are you calling my family liars?" And so and they actually like end up starting to fight, and so we have to like break them apart and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's if anybody gets a chance, come down in October, and it's called Spirit. It's a very good play, and then also the same gentleman who wrote Spirit also wrote another play called Smoke, and a lot of people don't know this. In the early 1900s, it was called the Black Patch War, or the Tobacco Wars, and neighbor was killing neighbor down here. They had these guys called the Night Riders. They would put on masks, get torches, horses. They would cut telephone lines, beat people to death with horse whips, shoot people, burn down tobacco barns. Because the Duke family kind of owned the tobacco industry and set the price. Well, a lot of the people here in the Black Patch decided to become their own independent farmers and get away from the Duke family. And at first, they were, doing well. But then, of course, Duke had all the politicians bought off and the judges and stuff like that. So he started winning a bunch of lawsuits trying to starve these guys out. And they're like, okay, well, we tried it the legal way. Now we're just going to start burning shit and killing people.
Amazing.
So the town just north of Kentucky, the Night Riders got together and actually took the whole. They rounded up all the people that they wanted affiliated with it, because basically the town said, hey, you don't run the show around here, and so the Night Riders were like, oh yeah, so they go over the whole town.
Jeez.
That's a very interesting part of the story. And then when we were talking about the Native American stuff earlier, there's one thing right by, I'm sure you probably saw this when you're down here, but Port Royal, that town I was talking about earlier, the town that had the where you could put your tobacco on a boat and it would go all the way down to New Orleans. Well,
Sure.
also that was one of the stops on the Trail of Tears.
Oh yeah.
So the original road, it's only a few miles from Adams, and that original road goes right through here, all the way to Oklahoma. So they're walking from Georgia all the way to Oklahoma, and they stopped right here, just a few miles from my house. And that was one of the stops on the Trail of Tears. And Port Royal was the town where they stopped at. And you can still walk in the same, some part of the old original highway is still there, which at one time was probably an Indian trail, one of the Indian trails. But yeah, it's interesting. You can walk right on the same road they did. You can see where they camped, everything. And that's just within a few miles of Adams.
And that now that ties Adam Jackson into this whole thing right there.
Yeah.
the whole Trail of Terrors. But I know it's getting late here. But I did want to point out too is there was an article that was released later on in the New York something Evening Post or something, where Betsy ended up suing the magazine because it was like a false claim or something with her name. So yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, she really didn't want to talk about it at all, and she kind of
got introverted, right? She was really introverted, like stayed inside.
Yeah, she didn't really visit anything. I mean, she stayed with her kids. She kept to herself. And yeah, but if somebody did talk smack about her family or her, or they would try to bring if they would try to talk about things that they didn't know about, she would go after them because that's, I mean, for one thing, I don't think she really wanted for it to be out there. I think she wanted people to forget. But if they were talking about it and they were saying a lot of false claims, well, she was like, okay, well, I'm going to go after you. So she had no qualms with that. So because she still people in this area, especially she grew up in the antebellum South, and honor is a very big deal. Honor your family and stuff like that. I mean, that's why one of the reasons why Jackson was in so many duels, because he got married to a woman, Rebecca, and they tried to claim that she was a bigamist. She was still married to her former husband, blah blah blah. And so anybody talks smack about Rebecca, his ex-wife or his wife, man, he was, you better get ready to go to Pound Town. He's either going to knock your teeth out or stab you, or you're going to get in a duel. And she grew up in that culture where your family name is to be honored and protected. And if somebody talks shit about you, you go after them. So it's still like that down here. I mean, you don't like if you talk shit about somebody and they're one of their relatives around, you're going to get a black eye. So
Pound Town.
Yeah. But
Steve,
it keeps everybody very polite. Everybody's very they still have a sense of honor down here, and everybody's armed. So it's a very polite society.
Armed and dangerous.
Yeah.
The gun show. So besides taking care of your children and finding buffalo skulls and being a thespian one time a year, is there anything else going on in your life as far as paranormal? I know you're always going to the battlefields, obviously.
Oh yeah, we go to. I don't know if have you ever been to Shiloh?
I have been to Shiloh, yes. Pittsburgh Landing. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
They're redoing that too. They're actually redoing the museum there, so it's closed right now.
Right.
Or it was closed, and they're redoing the displays.
Right. Yeah. Every year on the anniversary of the battle, I try to take my kids down there to Shiloh, and that's another. You want to get some creepy vibes, man, because that battlefield is one of the best preserved in America. Because as you know, you've been there. It's in the middle of
Hmm.
nowhere. You got to
Yep.
want to go there.
The
'Cause there's
hornet's
nothing.
nest, man. The hornet's nest.
Oh yeah, and Bloody Pond and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, you walk around and it pretty much looks like how it did during the battle.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
they've done a-
I did tie in somebody up here in Union, Illinois, Harley Wayne, to be like one of the first 5 people that got shot and killed there
Oh wow.
on that battle. I actually found his name in there and tied it into this guy over here, which was kind of interesting. So
Yeah, my wife actually, her great grandfather fought at Shiloh.
Yeah.
He was in the 15th Illinois.
that was the same one. He was the same one. Harley Wayne was in the same one. Is that freaking amazing?
Yeah, the 15th Illinois was here. Her grandfather was actually shot in the arm. He had to go home and recoup for a while. Ended up getting married, and then he came back down here. Linked back up with his unit. I believe they're in Louisiana by that time. But he just, because he was wounded, he kept getting sick. I believe he got like yellow fever or something like that, and they just ended up sending him home. He got sick, but it was interesting. We actually got to go to the exact spot where her grandfather was, when he was, fighting in the battle.
Yeah.
And then all my ancestors were on the opposite side of the checkerboard.
No way.
They were all Confederates, and so we went out to last year. We went out to Gettysburg, and I got 4
That's
ancestors.
right.
Yeah, and I got 4 ancestors that fought at Gettysburg, and so one was my direct descendant, my great grandfather and his 2 brothers. And I got another great grandfather on another side of the family. He was there. They're in the same brigade. They're only like a couple hundred yards from each other. But 50 years later in the future, they would end up getting related by marriage. But it was kind of cool to walk in the footsteps of where these guys were, and just see where it was going down. But
I think you were in Gettysburg a week after we were there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was not long after that.
Yeah.
Because we were there in August, and I think you guys were there like the week before.
The week before, yeah.
Yeah. But that was pretty cool. But yeah, we had a great time out there. But yeah, and the same, like I said, with Shiloh, that's probably one of the best preserved battlefields in America.
I agree.
Just because, like I said, there's nothing there. I mean, Gettysburg, they try to do a good job. Like, they try to keep all the, there's no like high-rise buildings or anything. But, you still got, it's still a working town. So you're always going to have, I think they're tearing down a few buildings. Like they bought, the Civil War Trust bought a few more buildings that they're going to tear down.
Right.
Right. Try to make it more original. But yeah, Shiloh, I mean, it's pretty much stayed that way since the battle because, as there's nothing out there. You got Corinth, that's about 20-30 miles south, but there's not a whole lot going on in Corinth either. And that's kind of cool. They still have the original, the railroad tracks there and all that stuff where they fought, and that's where Johnston's headquarters was and all that stuff, and Beauregard and all them guys. But yeah, I love living in Tennessee. It's a great, I miss.
You don't miss it up here.
What's that?
You don't miss it up here, just us.
I miss you guys. I don't miss the weather and the taxes and all that stuff. But
the Illinois bullshit.
Yeah, but and then like today it was like 70 degrees. So the winters are pretty mild. So
nice.
But yeah, but down here as I'm a history nut, and so I got like 4 Civil War battlefields within an hour of my house, and all the Revolutionary era history. I get the Bell Witch in my backyard, so there's a lot of stuff. I got Fort Campbell right down the road. You know, because I'm a vet, so it's kind of nice to go down there and, you know, see some.
And you got the last train to Clarksville too.
Yeah.
So on that note, we'll say goodbye to the folks and just hang on. We'll go back into the studio. So thanks for hanging out with us tonight, listening to the Bell Witch story. Steve, as always, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your whole knowledge. I mean, it was awesome. I had a great time. So hang on. We'll go into the studio and say our goodnights, I guess. So good night, everyone.
All right. Good night. Have a great night.
Oh, hey. Wow. Oh, hey everyone, it's Dean from Paranormal Pickers. Oh, I got the preview for the next episode. Oh, yeah. Here, take a peek. Oh.